Well, good morning once again. You are a good-looking group this morning. It's like, turn to your neighbor and say, "You must be talking about you."
We're talking about you.
All right. Welcome. Children's Church, you guys can be dismissed in 3, 2, 1, 0. So I was thinking the last couple of days, I was thinking about the idea of like last words. You know, like if you knew that the next words you were going to speak were going to be, were going to be your last words, you know, what would you say? What would you want to say, and who would you want to say it to if you knew that you weren't going to see someone again in this life? What would your last words to them be? It'd probably be something important, probably the most, if you knew ahead of time that those were going to be your last words, it'd probably be the most important thing you could think of is something profound, something from your heart, something vitally important. You would want to be your last words. Of course, we can't always choose our last words. Sometimes we don't know when we'll speak them. But if we knew what our last words were going to be, we put a lot of thought into what we would want to say. We've been talking about vision, as Tim had mentioned, for the vision for our church, and coming up into this new year, and kind of just let's retrace our steps just once again. It's just to build that foundation. And if you've been here, I apologize for the repetition, but just so we're all on the same page, if we want to talk about our vision for our church in the future, we've got to start in the right place, right? And so, otherwise we're not going to end up in the right place. So we want that foundation, and we talked about the lordship of Jesus Christ, and we need to realize that He is Lord, He is in charge, He is over all, and it's really His vision for the church because He's the one in charge. He's the important one. And we follow Him. We talk about needing a visionary faith. If He is Lord, we need to act like He is Lord. And so we step out in faith and trust in Him so we can carry out that vision. We can move towards those goals because He is in charge. And we can have the faith to step out of our comfort zone and do things that He calls us to do because we have that visionary faith. And we talk about having a visionary vigilance that if we try to accomplish things for God, Satan's going to get in there. There's obstacles. There's going to be opposition. There's going to be things that try to get in our way of accomplishing those goals. And we have the vigilance to stand firm and to keep going on. And last Sunday we talked about visionary giving. We talked about that to accomplish our goals, to reach our vision, it's going to take an investment of our time. We're going to have to give our time to the church and God's kingdom. And it's going to take our resources. Some of the things that we want to accomplish will have price tags involved, and that's just the nature of the world we live in. And so it's going to take an investment of our time and our resources to accomplish our vision for the future. I've never been so excited that I didn't get notes in the bulletin. Because it is a perfect example of God's sovereignty. And so you can see my title. And you can, from Tim's own admission, he had no clue what I was preaching on this morning. And he's already preached on it for me. But we're going to talk about a vision for the lost and those people that don't know Jesus. Isn't God great? Tim had no clue. But God did. And I love that. All right. So let's get back to last words. What did all that have to do with last words? Well, Jesus is our Lord, and He's our Savior. He is the head of the church. I'm not the head of the church. The elders aren't the head of the church. Christ is the head of the church. And so looking at some of His last words should show us what He thought was important. And so that these words would be a great place to look, because He did know what His last words would be before He ascended into heaven. And so it would be a great place to look when we try to find our vision for the church and what we should be doing as a church. Some of His last words is a good place to look. And we find some of those last words in Matthew chapter 28, and that's where we're going to start today. If you want to turn there. And this takes place, Jesus has been crucified, he's rose from the dead, and he's been seen by his disciples alive, and he's about to ascend into heaven. And he has some words to share with the apostles before he leaves them. He's going to be leaving them and going into heaven, leaving them in charge of establishing the church. And this is what he has to say to them in Matthew 28, verses 16 to 20. We had to memorize this in college, so I should quiz Tabitha and make sure, see if she still has it. Verse 16 says, Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Isn't that interesting? It's interesting that Matthew is writing this. He's like, okay, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And then he goes on, you're going to see, he just goes on, and he just drops that bomb of some doubted. And then he goes on, and like he didn't even mention it. That's just interesting to me. I think it brings us hope that here's these disciples. They've seen him crucified, and they've seen him alive again, but there's still some doubt. I mean, that makes me feel better about the times that I have some doubt. Because even in their situation, they're seeing him risen, they're seeing the risen Christ, but there's still some, like, what is that? There's still, he threw that in there. There's some doubting. I just think that's interesting. That's nothing to do with the sermon, so let's get going. All right. Verse 18. Then Jesus came to them and said, All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. All authority. We just talked about the lordship of Christ, and in that sermon I didn't use the word authority, but it's the same thing. Jesus is saying, I have the authority. I am Lord of all. The authority has been given to me. I'm in charge. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. I'm going to stop there for a minute. Therefore, as I've said in the past, whenever you read the Bible and you see the word therefore, it's like I want you to see like a little yield sign, like a little yield traffic sign. Just pause for a minute. And when you see the word therefore, you want to ask, what is that there for? So you want to look back again. So let's just remind ourselves, it says, therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. So what's the therefore? Therefore, because we just talked about it, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. So Jesus is saying, I've got the power, I've got the authority, I'm in charge here, so you can go and do what I tell you to do. I'm going to equip you. There's no reason to be afraid to do what I'm about to tell you to do, because I have all authority. I'm in charge. You can go out in confidence, because it's going to take a lot of confidence to go do what the disciples are about to do. You can have that confidence, you can have that power, because all authority in heaven and earth is mine, and I'm the one sending you out. I'm the one telling you to go. So therefore, go and make disciples. Disciples, followers of Christ, people who believe in and know and follow Jesus Christ. That's what they were charged to do. This passage is known as the Great Commission. So what is a commission? A commission is defined as this: an instruction, command, or duty given to a person or a group of people. So Jesus is saying, this is what I want you to do while I'm gone. This is your command. This is your duty. Your mission is to go and make disciples of all nations. Not just the people that look like you and talk like you and dress like you, but all nations. Go and make disciples. That is your commission. That is your job. That is your duty, your command. Go to people that don't know Jesus and get them to the point where they know Jesus. This isn't just a command for the apostles, this is the duty of the church. Because the original apostles, their job was to establish Jesus' church. So they go out and they preach, and the church begins to grow and it begins to be established. But this commission is the church's commission, not just the apostles' commission. We're still charged with the Great Commission to make disciples, to seek and save the lost. Why? Because God is passionate about saving the lost. It's God's desire that all come to know Him. And He is, in fact, the entire Bible is really God's story of, we see in Genesis how He lost us through our sin. We lost ourselves. And the entire Bible is God's story of trying to get us back. He's trying to seek the lost. He's trying to find a way to redeem us, to get us back to where we belong, back to Him. That's the entire story of the Bible, leading up to Jesus Christ, who gave His life to make that possible. He is the shepherd who leaves the 99 and searches for the lost sheep. It's His desire that all His children come to know Him. So much to the point that He died on the cross to make it possible. So God wants us to go and make disciples. That's our commission. To seek and to save the lost. And there's only one way they will be saved. And that's through Jesus Christ. I'm going to turn to Romans chapter 10, and we're going to spend the rest of our time in Romans 10, if you want to turn there. Romans 10:13 says, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. That's how you're saved, by calling on the name of the Lord. And there's other verses we could point to. There are many verses that talk about Jesus is the way. He's the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father except through Jesus Christ. He is not an option. He is the only option. He is the only way. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Those who don't, won't. So Jesus is the way that people are saved. So part of our vision for Zoah 2020 needs to be to lead people to know Christ, because that's how to be saved. Our vision needs to be that people would know Christ, that we would do what it takes for that to happen. So that's how we begin making disciples, is by introducing people to Jesus. And we do this by sharing our faith. So we're going to look at Romans 10 and 13 we read that says, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. And this leads Paul, as he's writing this, he leads him to 4 rhetorical questions, basically, that kind of have a progression of thought. They're questions that are kind of rhetorical in nature, and it's a chain of thought to get his point across. And so we're going to look at those questions one at a time. Starting in Romans 10:14. He says this, okay, so if everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved, Paul asks this question, how then can they call on the one they have not believed in? So how can they call on the one they have not believed in? So it's all about belief in Jesus. So these questions they're going to show this progression of thought. This first one is how important belief is. They can't call on Jesus to be saved if they don't believe that He is who He says He is. It starts with believing that Jesus, He is the Christ. He is the Son of the living God, the only way to the Father, who died and gave His life as an atonement for our sins. You have to believe in Jesus Christ and who He is and what He did. That's where it starts. Then that leads Paul to his second question. It's like, how can they believe? So they need to believe before they can call on Jesus. But how can they believe if they've never heard? They've never even heard about Jesus. The message of Jesus must be communicated. The word gospel that we use, it means good news. So it's good. You know, it's our chance to have a relationship with the Father, to be reunited with Him, to have a life here with God and life forever in His presence. It's good, but it's also news. News needs to be communicated. It needs to be shared. It needs to be spoken. It's the gospel is something that needs words attached to it. The charge to go and make disciples is a call to share the gospel. It's a call to evangelism, that scary word that, that word that intimidates us. But it's a call to evangelism. And everyone here who is a Christian, you were saved because you responded to the gospel. You responded to a message that somebody shared with you, words that they used. It may have been a parent or a grandparent. It may have been a Sunday school teacher or a minister. It could have been someone at church camp, a friend or a relative. But somebody shared a message with you, and that's why you're saved today. Lost people will never come to believe in Christ if they never hear about Christ. That brings us to Paul's next question. It's like, well, they need to hear before they can believe. Well, how can they hear without someone preaching to them? A message needs a messenger. And this word preaching here, it's to proclaim something with conviction, like a heartfelt conviction, something you hold to, and to proclaim that, to share that with somebody else. It's broader than, it's not talking about the profession of preaching. It's not talking about what I get up here and you endure on Sunday morning. But it's more broad than that. It's the sharing, it's the proclaiming of a message that you hold dear to. We're all to share the good news. We're all to be preachers of sorts, of how Christ has saved us and how Christ has changed us. So a message needs a messenger. And there's something about that that's worth mentioning here is that the life of the messenger needs to match up to the message. You know, we need to live our lives in a way that points people to the gospel and not distracts or detracts or takes away from the gospel. You know, there's a reason why overweight people don't sell exercise videos. There's a reason why bald men don't sell hair products. There's a reason why people who can't boil water don't have shows on the cooking channel. The message and the messenger should match up. If the message is to be believed, the message and the messenger should match up. And that's not to say that we have to be perfect. It doesn't mean that there's no room for mistakes. But it means that the love of Christ should be showing through us and in how we act and how we talk and how we treat other people. The love of the message of the gospel and our life should match up. It's unfortunate that the reputation that the church has I've talked to waiters or waitresses or hosts in restaurants. And Sunday is their least favorite day to work because the church people that come in after church. And think about how sad that is. That think of what this should be. There's a day of the week that God's people that are all about God's love for them, God's love for that we should show that love to each other. We're supposed to be living that out. We should be ambassadors of Christ's love. And so there's a day of the week where we all converge on restaurants across the country. That should be people's favorite time to work. I mean, when those waitresses should be, I can't wait till Sunday, and I get uplifted by those Christians that are coming in to eat lunch. But that's not the reputation we have. We have the reputation of being, needy or demanding or rude or cheap. So we need to do what we can that our lives as the messengers match up to what the message is. We're ambassadors of Christ. Paul's last question, he's like, how can anyone preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. That's on the slide. But how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. The sharing of the gospel, it's an act. It's a verb. It's something that it doesn't just happen. It's something you go and do. It's intentional. There is a place, like we said, for living your Christian life as an example to those around you. I mean, there's a place for that. You've got to do that. The messenger has to match up with the message. But at some point, words are necessary to share your faith. You can't live your life and never speak the word of Jesus and think that you're being a witness for him. That's what I would like to do. It'd be easy just to live a good life, try to follow the rules, and be nice to people, and just love them into heaven. But if you never mention the word Jesus, you're not sharing your faith with them. You have to speak and communicate with those you are close to so that they know the gospel, they know Jesus. Your life may show them that you are different, but it doesn't communicate the gospel to them. We have to do that ourselves. We're ambassadors for Christ. We're sent into the world to represent Christ. We're sent into the world to communicate his message. So Christ tells us to make disciples, to be witnesses and proclaimers of the good news of Jesus Christ. The good news is that he died on the cross in our place, so that whoever believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life. That is the good news. Jesus has commissioned us. He's counting on us. So Christ's mission for the church would be that we would be leading others to Christ. So that needs to be our vision, because it's his vision. So I want to share with you some steps we can take that others may come to know Christ. We would want to lead people to know Christ as a church and as individuals. And these are some steps to get us there. And the first one is just to realize that people without Jesus are lost. Sometimes we kind of lose sight of this. We kind of, we can look at the world and see people that don't know Jesus and just kind of shake our heads and be like, man, the world is a messed up place. It's like, there's so much evil in the world. So many people are lost and they just don't have that hope. And we kind of are too introspective with it. We're like, I'm so glad that I know Jesus. I'm so glad that I have that hope. I can't imagine living life without the hope that I have. And we kind of turn it inside and just leaving the lost. But we've forgotten what that word means, lost. The people without Jesus are lost. If when we dismiss here and you're going to the parking lot, somebody pulls in, rolls down the window, and calls you over and says, hey, I'm looking for I-65. I'm lost. And do you guys know where that is? Well, what kind of jerk would it be to not help the person out and say, okay, it's like this, here's how you get to I-65, You take this road and turn left, and then you turn right, and then it's a left, and you're going to be there. Because they don't know where they need to go, but you do. So you're at the mall, or you're at an amusement park, or you're at Holiday World or Kentucky Kingdom or whatever, and you see this little girl, this little boy, obviously lost. You can see it in their eyes, you can see it in their face. They've somehow gotten separated from their family, and they're lost. And you look and you're like, that's too bad. I think that little girl's lost. I just can't imagine. I hope they find who they need to find. All right, now let's get in line for our corn dog and just leave them lost. We wouldn't do that. None of us would do that. We see, I would hope that we would come and try to intervene and try to get them to somewhere where somebody can help them get found. So we need to realize that people are lost and what that really means. We have the movie Heaven is for Real. Well, hell is for real too. And the world is full of people headed there. And so we need to wake up to that fact. That people without Jesus are lost. And it's selfish of us to never do anything about it. The second thing we need to do is pray for opportunities. It's our job, it's our commission to share the gospel, but God is the one. It's His Spirit that works to open minds, to open hearts, to convict people of their sin, to lead them to their need for a Savior. That's all the Holy Spirit's job. So we need to communicate the message, but we need to pray for those opportunities, that God will prepare hearts, and He'll prepare people's lives for the message. So we need to pray. Pray for specific people that you know. Friendship evangelism is the most effective. Just think about your own experience. Most of you probably came to the Lord because of a relationship with somebody who cared about you enough to have that conversation with you and talking to you about Jesus and about your faith. Maybe it was family, maybe it was somebody in the church. But most of the time, people aren't saved by a stranger on a soapbox, on a street corner. Most people are saved by a friend, somebody who cares and loves and shows compassion. So we want to, as a church, we want to have a worship service that points people to Jesus. And we're going to do our best moving forward in this year to continue to have a worship service where if you come and you don't know Jesus, you leave here hearing about Jesus and hearing about what He did for you on the cross and how much He loves you and He wants you to be His child and He wants to forgive you of your sins. We're going to do everything we can to make this worship service a good experience for somebody that comes in and doesn't know Jesus, that we can love them, and we want to respond that way as a church. When we see somebody that's new and we're not familiar with them, to come up and be loving and to be supportive and just be that kind of church. We want that to happen on a Sunday morning. And we want to plan events like the Friends and Family Dinner where you can invite your friends or your neighbors and you can invite people to. And they can come and experience the love of God through the love of God's people. And they can experience that in a not-church type environment. So we want to plan events and things like that you can invite people to. But at the end of the day, it's a personal relationship that usually wins people to Christ. So we're going to do the best we can to point to Jesus in a worship service and to point to Jesus in the events and the things we do as a church. But at the end of the day, it's my job and your job, the people we know. The third step is to look for open doors. After you pray for opportunities, look for those opportunities to open. Look for those chances, those moments in somebody's life where they might be open and receptive to hearing about God's love for them. And number 4 is be prepared. You don't have to have all the answers. If we waited, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes when sharing our faith. If you wait till you have all the answers, you've got all the scriptures memorized, you know all the apologetics and all how to defend every skeptical question. If we waited until we had all those answers to share our faith, we would be waiting and waiting and waiting and never share our faith. So it's not about having all the answers, but we can be prepared. We can do our due diligence by being, we can be as prepared as we can be. Think about your testimony and write it out. And some of you have different testimonies. Maybe your testimony, you grew up in church, you've always been surrounded by God's love and God's family, and it just made sense to you because it's always been a part of who you are. And so when you got old enough to make that decision for yourself, it just made sense. And that's your testimony. We don't all have some dramatic, life-altering event, but we all have a testimony. So think about what your testimony is and think about what verses you would want to use if you had that opportunity to share with someone. Visualize yourself, picture yourself sharing your faith. There's some things we can do to prepare ourselves. There's things we can do in the future as a church to help prepare you. That's my goal for this year, is to help prepare you, whether it's through a sermon series or classes. I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but my prayer is that God leads us in a direction that we can equip the church to go out and to share your faith. Number 5 is be a positive example. We've already talked enough about that. Live the kind of life that people can see God's love. And 6, invite people to come and see. Invite people to come to Zoah. Maybe it's church service, maybe it's an event we're having. Invite them to come and experience it. You don't have to have all the answers. Just come and check things out and see what's going on here. And 7 is be vigilant. Don't be just too easily dissuaded. No, there's going to be rejections. There's going to be frustrations. There's going to be things that try to dissuade you from sharing your faith. And be vigilant. Don't give up. So we wrap up for today. Talk about Zoah 2020, our vision for the future. We want a vision for the lost. We want to be a church that leads people to know Christ. If you're here and you don't know Christ, we have this time at the end of the service. There's a song we're about to sing, an invitation song, and it's an invitation to make that decision, to become a Christian and accept Christ as your Savior. And it's an invitation for you to come and do that. It's an invitation. Maybe if you've wandered away, you've become a Christian, but you've wandered away, and it's time to come home. It's an invitation to do that. But also for this sermon, it's an invitation to really repeat the challenge that Tim already gave you in the greeting meditation. Is who's that one person that you can begin sharing Jesus with? Who is your one person? I see it. We look around. There's room for our one people. Look to your left, look to your right. There's a chair for your one person here. Let's pray. Father God, we just want to be a church that points people to you. The people that don't know you would come to know you, and that we can be your instruments in accomplishing that vision. So use us. Use us as a church. Use us as individuals to just go and reach the lost, to point people to you, to go and make disciples. That's the duty you've given us, the charge you've left with us. So Lord, empower us. Help us to look for those opportunities we have to share your love with those around us. And empower us through your Holy Spirit. Your Spirit will give us the words to say and the courage to say it, Lord. We trust in you. We step out with that visionary faith that we can do this, that we can find a person who's lost and help them to be found. That we can do that through your Spirit, alive and at work. In your Son's name we pray. Amen. Would you stand as we sing?